Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the debrief. Geo, how is oneself?
So, Charlie. I'm feeling all right despite it being a Monday morning. However, there's a bit of concern. It feels like there's like a bit of a dark cloud forming over West Ham at the minute. Do you know what I mean? I think I've still got this frustration from the transfer window still within me, which shut on Thursday. So this isn't healthy. But I think the lack of attacking players still frustrating me. I think yesterday you look at it and think, well, we could have done with an attacking player. And if it was just a new signing that was on the bench and wasn't quite ready to start, but he could play 20 minutes and fine. So I think at the minute, everything's just sort of, there's a lot of issues. And when you put it all together, it's dark cloud.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I don't know. It's just one of those things where I try to be as I try to be a positive person in general, right? And I try to be as positive as humanly possible when it comes to this sort of stuff as well. And I think I found it quite difficult after yesterday, because, and I think the worst thing about yesterday for me is that it really was there for the taking. It felt like it was there for grabs. I
Yes.
felt like in the first half, you said at halftime that if we were in the lead, it wouldn't have been unfair, and I felt like it was true. And I even felt later in the game we started to come back into it again more. But it was just that 25-minute period after the second half started where we were just completely at lost, completely at sixes and sevens. Man United had taken a step up, we had taken a step down, and it was like a sucker punch. It just hit us for six at that exact moment. Rocked up, bang, that's all they needed, and then the rest of the time we were just left floundering. And it's so frustrating because it felt like it was so. It really did feel like to me that they were there for the taking. To be honest.
Yeah. I stand by my comments yesterday. I was surprised how many people agreed with me. Actually, I was expecting a lot of abuse for saying we played well in the first half, but naturally a lot of people said that. What game were you watching and stuff? But I can't pretend I thought we played bad, Charlie. I thought we did well in the first. But that basically going into the game, my expectations were we were going to lose. I was convinced we are going to lose, but at half time, I was thinking, hello, we're played all right here. We're unfortunate to be behind. I think I thought we deserved to be ahead at half time. But what came with that was increase in expectation and hope. So when the first whistle went, my expectation was non-existent. I thought we were going to lose. But by the time the second half kicked off, my expectation was we could get something out of this game. We're doing all right here. Man, you're not playing well. And then, 4 minutes later, bang, it was 2-0, and then it was back to 0 again. So for that it was a nice 4 minutes where I thought we could get something for the game. But I still, in hindsight, like sort of emotions gone now, I look back at it in a clearer mind. And I've watched an hour of the game. I've tried to squeeze it all in this morning before play ratings. I got to an hour. And again, I still think we played really well. I think tactically we got everything spot on in the first half. But the second half, I'm just left scratching my head as to what happened. It felt like the energy was gone. We came out almost like we'd lost. And while I believe we played well, and at halftime when we were on the build-up show, there's a lot of people feeling the same at halftime, which is we can get into this. Man U's not playing well. We're playing well. We can get back into this. And I feel like that message wasn't relayed at halftime to them because they came out with no belief. I think it would have been better taking those in the live chat yesterday at halftime. I thought we could get back in. I think we'd been better putting them in the changing room at Old Trafford and geeing them up and saying, "Look, you can do this. You're on top. You're doing all right. You just need a little bit of luck, a little bit of composure, create one or two big chances," which we did do, but we just didn't take them. But there was nothing. I was so disappointed in the end with the lack of fight and effort in that second half. Actually, I thought it was just. I don't know how to describe it, to be honest with you, Charlie. It was just a bit deflating.
Yeah, like I say, I think it was the fact that I felt like we were like we did get better towards the end of the second half. Like there was definitely a period where I was like, "Oh, we're finding our feet again." But by that point, you're already 2-0 down, then 3-0 down, and it's just like, I mean, the thing is when they face top teams, and when you face top teams, they do have the ability because they are so good to go bang, you're done. That's it. You slipped up once, you're done for. I remember times where we faced Manchester City where we have just been unbelievable at the back, and one little lapse in concentration, they get a goal, they win 2-0 or whatever. It's just the way it works. But what's frustrating, I think, for me from yesterday, Man United aren't that right now. They just aren't. They don't have the aura of a top team. They have the name of a top team. They have the brand of a top team, but they aren't that team. And it's frustrating that we still let those. We still, despite having a really good first half and something of a decent end, still got hit for a sucker punch. And it feels like, I don't know. It just feels like it shouldn't have happened. Especially considering, I don't know. You always say, show me a goal, I'll show you a mistake. I feel like at least two of those. I feel like, well, one of them in particular, and the second, I think their first goal as well, if I was to add to it, were avoidable potentially. And then I don't know. Do you know what? I'm just playing it through again in my head, right? I'm just playing through all of the individual moments because I'm like, performance wise, it's the big thing, but it's the moments where you lose. And I'm thinking back to the Emerson loss. I'm thinking back to James Ward-Prowse. Something back to Kalvin Phillips messing it up. I'm thinking back to again moving across the ball. I just how we've let Manchester, and I feel like a little bit. It feels a little bit like we've let Manchester United do that. It really does to me. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm
there was a
getting
lot of
frustrated
self-infliction
myself.
involved yesterday, and this is why coming into the game it was unbeaten in 6, and it was something I refused to say because like in the build-up show, I flipped it round and said, "Yeah, but we haven't won without Lucas Paqueta." So what one you can say unbeaten is like in 6 in the Premier League. That's true, but you want to include the FA Cup. We haven't won in 6 now. So I think there's a good chance that come after the next weekend, which is obviously Arsenal, there's a damn good chance we've got no win in 7, which is, it's not good for. Now, hopefully Lucas Paqueta's back. And I do think, right, I'll be honest with you, Charlie, I think if we had Lucas Paqueta yesterday, I'd fancy us to win that. I do. I think what we were
I
missing,
agree.
he would have brought to the team, which was that bit of X factor, that creativity. We didn't really have much of it. So for all our dominance, and I use that word lightly, it's not like we're all over Man U, but for being the better side in the first half, we didn't create any clear-cut chances. The sort of half chances come from either a bit of an effort from Ben Johnson, some set pieces, Casemiro strangling Alvarez. Like I said, I think we played better in the first half, but actually our better chances were in the second half, which is funny. Major just said something which was exactly how I felt, which was we played better than I anticipated, but we got beat worse than I predicted, which I'm not sure what that is, but it must be something. That's exactly how I felt. I thought it would be a narrow loss. Obviously, it turned out to be 3-0. But I have to be honest with you. When you're 2-0 down with 5 minutes to go and it goes to 3-0, it doesn't tend to bother me that much. Just like if we're winning 2-0 and go 3-0, if I celebrate the goal, but I feel like the game's already won. Just like yesterday, I felt before Phillips made that error, I felt the game was already lost. I think it was, to be honest with you, Charlie, I felt the game was lost when they made it 2-0. Like 50 minutes or whatever it was. As soon as that second one hit the net, we don't have 2 goals in us. We just don't. I was hoping we could have. I think had we made it 1-1, we might have had another goal in us. But if we made it 2-1, I don't think we would have went on to get that equaliser. Slim margins, Jaribone does a bit better with that chance, and you just never know. But I don't know. I think by the 70th minute anyway, I'd already given up to some extent. I was just waiting for full time, which is sad. I don't like being like that, and I hate seeing fans feel like that, regardless of who they support, where they've just got no hope for their team. It's a sad feeling to have, but that's how I felt yesterday with quite a considerable amount of time left on the clock. It was just a bit like, can we just get this over and done with now, please?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think the truth is that without Paquetá, we don't have 2 goals in us. I think both lineups that we've seen
He makes,
in the
by the
last.
way, I think Paqueta's crucial to drive Bone working as a striker. I've been thinking about this a lot.
Go on.
Some games Bone will work and some games Bone won't, regardless of who else is in the team. But the games that Bone will work as a striker, I think he needs Paqueta threading him those passes. The one he got from Alvarez yesterday was fantastic, but he usually gets 2 or 3 from Paqueta like that. No, they don't always work, but Paqueta tries 2 or 3 passes like that to Bone every single game. Yesterday, he got 1, and that was from Alvarez, and I think he did well. I thought he brought it down well. I thought he got into the 18-yarder well. It was just because he was on his right foot, I feel like there
Yeah,
was a second of hesitation. He needed to hit it perfectly, whereas his left foot, he's probably a bit more comfortable taking it on early and taking a bit rough and ready. And because of that, Dalot, and I think it's superb defending by Dalot. Like I said, it was down the other end of the pitch and Emerson had come across to Buck Hoyland on his left foot, I'd be saying how it's incredible defending by Emerson. So I'm inclined to just give the credit to Dalot there. On another day, Bowen hits a target with that and possibly even scores. You look at the way Ollie Watkins took his goal against Sheffield United. It's a similar way that he's running into 18-yarder and defenders coming across. It's just that Watkins got his shot away just in time before the defender came across his path. But I think Bowen as striker and Bowen as a striker needs Lucas Paqueta. It doesn't mean it'll work, but I think it doesn't work at all without him in the team.
Yeah, I mean, something. Where is it? Game right I was talking about here. We are normally so clinical. Feel like that has gone recently. I mean, especially yesterday. I was just trying to find it on the SofaScore app, right? The exact stats, because obviously in the moment when I'm doing the watch along, there's just so much nonsense going on that I remembered stats happening, but taking them in precisely is coming. 22 shots yesterday from us. Yeah. Like in the first half, what was it? Manchester United had 4 and we had 12. And like to get a bit nerdy, XG of 1.4 compared to Manchester United's XG of 0.75, which shows they're taking chances that they necessarily wouldn't take all of the time and we just weren't. But that's the exact opposite of what we usually are. Usually we create so few less chances, but they're really high value. Whereas this one was just like scattergun. But that's the thing about it is, in that sense, it's almost more frustrating because, and again, I'm not to pick it out again. I don't want to be. I do think it's the turning point of the game, but I almost feel guilty picking it out because it is a left back taking a shot and fluffing it. But I just feel like that moment is so utterly pivotal and was a strong chance. Just hit the target at least, to watch him miss it and then to go up the other end and score instantly.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the exact antithesis of what we have been for such a long time. And I do agree with you. I think Paquetá, although he's not the guy taking the shots, he's the guy creating the opportunities to have such high quality shots. Be it through a great assist, be it through just dragging people towards him and getting them out of the way. We do just miss that hugely, just massively. And it affects Jarrod Bowen, it affects whoever's on the right hand side as well, be it Kudus or Bowen if he's playing there. It's just, I don't know. I felt like you said partway through, I think it was at halftime, you said to me, that there's games that suit Jarrod Bowen up front and the games that don't suit Jarrod Bowen up front. I almost agree with you. I think without Paquetá, it's really difficult to see
any game that suits Jarrod Bowen up front.
Basically, yeah.
Because Bowen up front can take advantage of the spacing behind centre backs, which when we're camped outside the box, he struggles. The only time you see Bowen is when he comes outside the 18-yarder and gets involved. Now, that happens from a lot of strikers in the league. There's not that many strikers in the league that are good, sort of fox in the boxes, as you want to call them that these days. That's why you tend to see strikers now that like playing down the channels and whatnot. They're more common in the Premier League now than just that guy that stays in the middle of the box. So it's not just a Bowen thing. However, I think Bowen as a striker works when he's got that spacing behind the defence where he can run in behind. He almost needs that high line to play against. And that's all very well and good. But if you've got no one to play that pass, there's almost like no point for him even playing as a striker. You know, even Fornals would try the passes now and again. He wasn't in great form, of course, but he's somebody that could sometimes play that ball. But there was one time yesterday, it was James Ward-Prowse that made the run in between Dalot and Maguire, and it was Kudus that had it. He didn't spot it, but Ward-Prowse ended up running and being like 5 yards behind and had to come all the way back, and Kudus went sideways with it. And it was, I think Kudus is an exceptional player, but you don't actually get that much creativity. This might be unpopular. I don't feel like you get much creativity from him. I think in terms of shooting, in terms of dribbling, his power, his strength, his pace, I think that's fantastic. But in terms of that through ball that you see from Paquetá, I've not seen loads of it from Kudus, actually. I've not seen him doing that defence splitting pass, which is okay. He doesn't have, they don't all do it. It's a very difficult skill to do. I'm sitting here making all everyone can do it. Man U, you've got Bruno Fernandes, and that's it. Rashford, Garnacho, they don't do it either. That's not their bag. But we've got Paqueta, and once he's out, there's almost nobody else that can do that type of pass. And like I said, this isn't a criticism of Kudus. I love the guy, right? But that creativity from him, I think, is quite low, actually. All in all, but it works when you've got him and you've got high creativity in Lucas Paqueta, who perhaps doesn't dribble as much. And then you've got Bowen, who's a bit of a hybrid of the two to some extent, not as creative as Paqueta, but better than Kudus, not as strong as Kudus, but better than Paqueta dribbling. And it's a good mix. So it's just difficult, actually. I think when you take out 1/3, you miss it quite drastically, actually. We don't really have a replacement for either of them. Any of those three. You've got Cornet there, but he's not really a direct replacement for any of them. And at the end of the day, Charlie, yesterday we had, if you can agree with me, that Kudus and Bowen are two exceptional right wingers. Well, yesterday we started the game with neither of them playing right wing.
Yeah.
It goes back to Scotland. Actually, it doesn't really, but it reminds me of Scotland when we had Andy Robertson and Kevin Tierney. And Steve Clark was like, oh, what do I do here? So he played one left centre-back and one left wing-back. We went to Israel. We failed. They were drew, but we needed to win. We drew. And Andy Robertson came out on camera after and said, you've got two of the best left-backs in the world, and neither of us are playing left-back. Well, yesterday we got two of the best right-wingers in the league. Neither of them are playing right wing. So...
yeah. And that's a failure of long-term investment in the club. Long-term transfer business in the club. It just is. Because you shouldn't be in a situation where neither of them, because that's forced. They sort of have to. And I think Ben Johnson, I was going to save this to a little bit later because, to be honest, it's another positive for me. And I was going to save this. I didn't want to just sort of disrupt the flow. But Ben Johnson did a good job in the first half on the right.
Yeah.
I think second half it was more difficult it was just more difficult, and I don't think he was as effective. I don't think he was bad, but I don't think he was as effective. And I think potentially we both said at halftime that switching those two around would be something ideal.
Yeah.
Because again, I feel like I saw some people after the game on Twitter. I dared step on Twitter for a short period of time after the game, Geo, and I went, do you know what? Not for me, this vibe, I'm off, not going to deal with it. And I saw some people sort of being like, well, why the hell would we switch them over when it was going sort of all right? Why would we switch Kudus to the right and Johnson to the left? And I think I have a couple of things to say about that one. It was going all right, but I felt like Kudus was being impacted. Kudus' natural position is on the right. And as much as people want to say, like, look, the right and the left, what's the difference? There were a couple of times in that first half where where Kudus was receiving the ball and he couldn't turn as naturally as he usually would because he was on the other side. Because he's left-footed. So ball's coming into him and he's got his back to the side and he's got to go that way. He has to turn sort of slightly clumsily to then get it onto his left to start driving away. Whereas when you draw the ball into you here and you're going that way and you're left-footed, it's a natural turn and you can just go. And that sort of split second is what makes him so brilliant sometimes. That makes him so fast.
I'm glad we switched it. It didn't work, but I'm pleased we switched it. It's with hindsight, it didn't work. But at the time, I was screaming out to get Kudus over on that right so he could cut in on his left. But the one thing I will say, I thought he looked up really well with Emerson. I think Emerson played well in the first half.
Yeah, I agree.
And not so much in the second half. And I think that might have been the fact that Kudus was no longer there. I thought their link-up play was really good. And I think the reason we started with Kudus on the left and Johnson on the right is because of Luke Shaw. Honestly, yeah. I think going forward, Dalot's all right, but he steps into midfield a little bit, and he's okay. He's good, but he's that's it. Luke Shaw, I think, is a level above Dalot as a fullback and getting forward, and he provided an assist against Wolves. And I think the reason Johnson started on the right was almost to marshal Shaw. And there was a few occasions in the first 15 minutes where Rashford was getting on the ball and Johnson was getting back. And he was the one tackling Rashford, and Ceballos hit the overlapper and Luke Shaw. It was working. I felt we shut them down quite well down that side in the first half, actually. Johnson and Ceballos, I thought they coped fine with Rashford and Shaw. So I think he was possibly in that position from a defensive point of view rather than an offensive one. But I'd struggle to accept the opposite argument, which is no, Johnson and Kudus were there because of what we could do going forward. I'd say, well, there's little to no evidence that Kudus is going to do that on the left side. Whereas the right side, we've got plenty that he's going to score goals. So I
Mm.
can only really accept the argument, which is my opinion, which is that it was a defensive move to start Ben Johnson on the right. Half time with a goal down. Now we go for what is better offensively. And it turns out it didn't work, but I believe that's why Johnson was over on the right-hand side of the game. But before we go any further, if you can download the SofaScore app, that would be fantastic. The link's in the description below. Charlie's already read a couple of stats out for it. If you don't want statistics, that's fine. But this is a really good way of getting involved in sort of statistics for dummies, if you like. You can go on the app. You click on the game like Charlie has. You've got the match statistics. You can click on lineups. You have all your West Ham players there. You can click on the player, and it'll give you basic statistics for that players involved, such as passes, shots, tackles, interceptions. You can get any statistic you want that you need for that player involved in yesterday's game. Heat map of Ben Johnson. There he is, bombing down the right-hand side. But it does also help the channel out. We get paid per download. There's no sign-up involved. You don't have to give any personal details. You just download it. It goes onto your device. Happy days. And it's a very useful app to use. I've used it before they've started sponsoring us, and I will continue to use it post sponsoring us. Same with OneFootball. Still use OneFootball. They don't sponsor the channel anymore. I don't have a link for that. Still use it pretty much every single day. Thank you very much to Ionix. He has downloaded it. Shall we take some comments from the live chat, Charlie, before we wrap this one up this morning?
Yeah. I think first one I want to bring up is just because it brings up Johnson. That's Bazza. Johnson is not a midfielder. Only reason he was in that position was to defend. Negative setup. Disagree. I'm not saying that wasn't part of it. I'm not saying that definitely wasn't part of it. We saw, for example, a couple of seasons ago against Villa, where we started, was it Fredericks at right wing? And basically to stop their left-hand side, and it ended up working. I think the one thing Johnson brings that other players don't...
What bit do you disagree with here, or all of it? Do you agree that he's not a midfielder?
I agree that he's not a midfielder. I will say that. Okay. Maybe he'll become a midfielder. You know, when I was in the midst of my Bele madness yesterday, I did at one point suggest he might be the new Gareth Bale, and we're seeing him emerge as a world-class winger. Obviously, I'm being a bit insane when I say that on purpose, right? But I do agree he's not a midfielder. What I will say is I don't think it was necessarily set up to defend. I think what it was someone who has shown the ability to... has shown, actually not just showing the ability, showing the willingness to grab the ball and drive with it, which is something that not a lot of players can do from a deeper position. Like, because Cornet will grab the ball and he'll drive with it, but it'll pretty much be he's already through on goal 1v1. He's going to drive in that final 20 yards or whatever there is left, right? Johnson, and we saw it again when he moved deeper, will pick up the ball and he'll move forward with the ball. He'll drive into the middle. He'll drive into the space. He'll start to create moments. And that's something that we just don't have otherwise right now because of the injuries and because of the way it works. So I think he was picked more because of that. And I don't think it's necessarily... I also can't lie and say that I don't think part of it is just because David Moyes trusts him more than he trusts Cornet. Because I think that is also part of it. And we've seen... over a long period of time, you reminded me of this at the beginning of the game, and I don't think you're wrong. We've seen over a long period of time, Moyes a lot of the time will pick all the players he trusts most, and then whatever's left, it's just that no matter if they're out of position or in position, that person.
Yeah, honestly, I do believe some, not always, and I don't think he thinks who's my favourite 11. I've got 8 defenders, I'll pick all them, but I think there's an element of picking his favourite / senior players. I do think there's an element of the hierarchy of the squad comes into play, particularly for the bench. Often it's the youngsters that are left out, and we'll have an unbalanced bench rather than dropping one of the senior players. Now, that's not going to be an issue because we don't have enough senior players anymore. But I do think sometimes there's hierarchy comes into it with David Moyes, and he's picking on that rather than merit. I actually think, I agree with what Bazza said. I don't think he's a midfielder per se. I think it was a bit of a negative move from Moyes. But listen, Johnson has a good game, but I still don't think he should necessarily have started right wing. For Moyes to have been proven correct on that, we would have had to A, win the match, or B, Ben Johnson would have had to do something significant, I think, in order to justify it. And I think he played well. I'm doing the player ratings in 20 minutes with Gonzo. Spoiler, I gave him a 7 out of 10. I was happy with what I seen with Ben Johnson. I don't blame him for the Phillips goal. I sort of changed my mind a little bit where I think, okay, he could have passed it back to Zoom. I should have been. But actually, the way I more look at Kalvin Phillips, saying, hang on a minute, you've allowed that ball to come across your body. Had you taken it on, you could have controlled that and passed it. But because you've tried to turn, McTominay's... Anyway, my point is I blame Phillips a hell of a lot more than Johnson. Whereas on Thursday, I blame Zuma more than Phillips. This is switching it around now. But I have to agree with Baz a little bit. I do think it was a negative move there, especially when you could have had Kudus in what has been his best position on the right wing. And we've got a left winger in Maxwell Corday. It's not like he didn't have one. He's got one. He basically chose Ben Johnson right wing over Maxwell Cornet. And that's, well, I'm going to deal with the whole squad players as a video because I'm quite passionate about it. So I'll get into it. I want to take on this one. Sorry, on you go. I'll start.
I was just say, although I agree with him there, but we can move on. Cornet had a significant amount of time on the pitch. I still maintain my position that I really.
He was rubbish,
I think he should. Don't get me wrong. I think he should have started yesterday. I said it before. The guest said it in the preview. I wanted him to start. All of that stuff. I continue to not see the point in Maxwell Cornet, but I think again that's a failure of squad building more than it is anything. The fact that we're in a position where I love Thomas Souček. I know this is gonna. I'm sorry, everyone. I know this is going to annoy you. I apologise in advance. I love Thomas Souček, and I don't particularly rate Maxwell Cornet. Souček had to be dropped, and Cornet had to start, in my opinion. And I think that's a failure of squad building more than it is anything else. Carry on with whatever you were going to
say. Sam's asking what we thought of Sean's Twitter poll. Now, I haven't been on Twitter, but someone sent it to me, and Sean basically said, if Moyes gets a new deal, will you renew your season ticket? Right, now this is something I'm not even going to discuss the results. What I am going to discuss is the poll itself. I think it's a load of nonsense. And it's not because Sean's done it. It's polls in general. When Sean's poll doesn't represent season ticket holders wanting to renew or not, it doesn't. It represents people on Twitter and what they're clicking. A lot of people that voted won't even have season tickets.
Yeah.
So first of all, for that poll to be legit, it needs to go to all season tickets and only season ticket holders. That's neither. That's a very small percentage of season ticket holders, and they're not all season ticket holders. So that's already invalidated the poll, in my opinion. All it does is reflects what Sean's followers intend to do or would do if they were a season ticket holder. It doesn't represent what it happened. I feel confident that if David Moyes was to get a new deal, the renewal rate would be over 85% comfortably.
Yeah, I agree.
I do, honestly. I think it would be. I know one or two people that say they won't renew, and I believe them. I don't think they will renew. And I know one or two people that say they won't renew. I don't believe them. I think they will, because I've heard them say it about Pellegrini, about Bilic, about Alvarez, and they keep on renewing every single time. I'm not going to do it if he's here next season. He's still here, and they still renew. But I don't think the club care, because we've sold out our season tickets since we moved to the London Stadium. And while we can argue the football is as enjoyable or not, results-wise, it's better than it used to be. We had a high renewal rate under Slaven Bilic when we have Simone Zaza up front, where we were signing Feguli. We had Harvard Nordveit running around. We had renewal rates after just surviving relegation with Jordan Hugo coming in the January transfer window. We've always renewed. Season tickets have always been purchased at the London Stadium, and I think they always will. But that poll for me is invalid. If we ran a poll here, it doesn't represent West Ham fans. It doesn't represent season ticket holders. It represents Hammers Chat subscribers, and that is it. Sean's poll represents Sean's followers, and that is it. They're not even all season ticket holders. I think it's a load of nonsense.
I get frustrated because people often come into the watch along and demand I do a poll about David Moyes. And I understand their vibe on it, but I think what frustrates me is, like you say, it's not representative in any way, shape, or form. Like, for example, like you say, if we did a poll right now, not only would it only be representative of Hammers Chat subscribers, it would only be representative of people who are watching the video at 9 a.m. specifically right now.
Yeah, there's 386 people watching. It would be the views of 386 people. And they're not all, with greatest respect, they're all season ticket holders. No one's claiming to be season ticket holders. There's people watching right now in America, in Australia. There's people that follow Sean, probably in flipping Thailand and whatever else. They've never been to a West Ham game, and they're going, nah, I wouldn't renew. Well, with the greatest respect, it's not aimed at you. It's meant to be for season ticket holders, but it's not. It's for Sean's followers. Two completely different things.
Yeah, it frustrates me because I just don't. I think it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of the way these things work. But whatever. As someone who as someone who'd studied both politics and maths with statistics, it's one of the most frustrating things in the world to watch happen. But we move. One of the things I wanted to bring up was Marky Boy here. We shouldn't still be experimenting 23 games into a season. I disagree. I get your point, and let me put it this way: it's ideal to not be. But I think when you have as strong an 11 as we've had, and we've stuck by it. And I think that is twofold. Our sticking by 11 is twofold. It's one, because it's really strong and it's very obvious what our strongest 11 is, especially in the attacking areas. And so why would you mess with a winning formula? And two, Moyes is stubborn and will do it through thick or thin when he should rotate. We've spoken about it on this show before. There are games where he definitely should have rotated and he hasn't, right? But when that is the situation and they go down injured, I've not got a problem with experimenting and seeing what works and happening, because we've got to where we were in the table because of not doing it previously. And so when it's come to it, and we've had injuries, and we had the transfer window and stuff, I'm fine with us experimenting. It's not ideal to be experimenting. I would love to go, right, I would love it in my mind to be able to go, Paquetá comes out, this person comes in, we're still as good as we were. I would love to be like, these three players come out, this is what we do instead. I would love to have that. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that as a premise, but I don't think it's necessarily a stick to beat anyone over the head with, because I feel like, again, it's just one of those things where you have the amount of injuries we've had, you have to start rotating, and then when Antonio goes down, we put Bo in there, he sort of starts to work. Okay, that changes the way it all plays out again, because at the beginning of the season, Kudus wouldn't have necessarily been a starter, then he starts starting, then he starts playing really well, and you start moving pieces around. Like, football, you can't just have your singular things consistently. It is a changing beast, a forever evolving beast. So as much as it's not ideal, I don't think we shouldn't be. I'm fine with us experimenting. And if anything, I'm not necessarily against it against Manchester United. As much as I agree with what you said, Gio, before the match. I can't remember if it was on a preview or the build-up show. We're talking about results versus performance and games against like Manchester United. For you personally, partly because of where you grew up, but also, I think it is, Manchester United is potentially one of those games where it's just like, the result matters more than anything else. As much as it's frustrating to be doing the experimentation in that time, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, to be honest with you.
I know Mark has put that in quotation marks, so you're using the word experimenting loosely. I think it's a good thing. I think if we played the same team against Bournemouth yesterday, I'd have been livid. If I saw James Ward-Prowse left wing, now granted that's an experiment, but he's obviously gone, that hasn't worked, let me try something different. So I'm pleased that we're not, if anything, the biggest criticism I've had of David Moyes over his long period of time at West Ham is quite often he doesn't experiment, that he sticks with the same players, the same formation, the same style. And last season in particular, we kept on losing. And I was like, hang on, we're losing. Why are you still doing the same thing, expecting it to suddenly work? At least yesterday, he tried something different. That's what we'll give him. It didn't work. Arguably, it should have, depending on the finishes of Jared Bowen and Emerson. We might have come away with it yesterday. Like I said, I feel like we deserve to be leading at halftime. So arguably, the experimenting worked for 45 minutes. It's just the scoreline didn't reflect it. And I don't mind it, because after our game, I went and watched Arsenal-Liverpool, Kai Havertz and a false nine. I would argue that's experimenting. He's played there before at Chelsea, but Mikel Arteta brought him in to be a number 8 alongside Odegaard with Declan Rice in there. Well, I would argue Arteta to some extent, maybe not completely, but to some extent, he certainly tweaked it and putting Jorginho in there next to Declan Rice and putting Kai Havertz in a false nine, and it worked. So I would argue that's a bit of an experiment. Last season, and maybe the last third of the season, we've seen Trent Alexander-Arnold picking up this hybrid role of a centre midfielder. That's experimenting. Jurgen Klopp is experimenting with a third of the season to go. Yesterday, Mikel Arteta is experimenting in what is a huge game at the Emirates, and it worked. So I think managers always are to some extent. It just depends on if you want to call it experimenting or tweaking or changing tactics to suit the opposition. It depends on how you want to word it, but I think it's a good thing. The one thing I dislike a lot is somebody that's got their one way of playing, and that is it. Aston Villa play a different way every single game. Every game, I love watching Aston Villa right now because I don't know how they're going to play. I love it. Honestly, I love that tactical side of it, where I put Villa on and I'm looking for differences between their last game. I have watched Aston Villa more than any other team this season. I'm convinced I have. And it's because I'm fascinated with the way Emery sets them up every single game.
Yeah.
Against Sheffield United at the weekend, he had Yuri Tielemans further forward than Ollie Watkins a lot of the time. Absolutely loved watching that. I think, why is he doing that? Bang, Watkins scores. Bang, Tielemans. Granted, it was an individual effort from Tielemans, but bang, Tielemans is on the score sheet. I love it. I really enjoy managers that tweak their team depending on who they're playing. If you're Man City, you don't need to because you're the best team. But when you're not the best team, you've got to gain advantages. And a lot of that comes through your manager's tactics. And I strongly believe that's why Aston Villa are doing so well this season, that Emery is tweaking it every single week. It's impossible to prepare. How are you meant to prepare to play Aston Villa? You don't know what they're going to do. Anyway, so experimenting, big yes. But Johnson on the right wing, a bit of a wild experiment.
Don't get me wrong, it was a wild experiment, and I'm not exactly, again, taking my stupid glasses off. I'm not going to say it was something that makes perfect sense and would be a long-term solution. I potentially think it's a short-term solution, but I don't think that matters because Paqueta is probably soon back. But I mean, I remember watching Cesc Fabregas play up front for Spain. And that was Spain.
Euros.
That was Spain who was winning the Euros and the World Cup at the time. Like, I remember watching Cesc Fabregas turn up front for him. Cesc Fabregas, man, could barely run at the best of times, and I don't
randomly, he's one of my all-time favorite footballers. Fabregas.
Oh, I love Cesc Fabregas. What a baller! What an absolute baller! One of those guys who I would just, you know this, but like it's a bit like my love for Santi Cazorla as well.
Just to say, no, it's this isn't what I'm saying at all. I hate when people do this. I've not once compared Moyes to Emery. I've not once said that. I'm talking about how Emery changes it every week. So if we're talking about experimenting, I enjoy it. Emery experiments every week. He does it. He changes his tactics every week. Moyes changed his tactics yesterday. I'm not comparing the two whatsoever. It's I don't know. I'm just.
Also, can I get something off? Can I get a little moan off my chest? Just a very tiny moan, right?
Before we wrap it up, right?
Before we wrap it up,
and then we'll wrap it up.
I was listening to the Tifo Football podcast, right? That talking about mid-table teams going up. That Jack and Cal, who do analytics on our Patreon with us, was on, right? And they were talking about I think the title is something like "Can mid-table teams really progress" or whatever, and one of the points brought up to them was the idea that Aston Villa are potentially the model for this. What are you talking about? If they're playing a front three of Diaby, Bailey, and Watkins, it cost over 100 million. Can we stop all acting like Aston Villa are some insane plucky underdogs? They've spent crap tons of money. Just like everyone else, there's the way the world works at this point. And it's so frustrating to watch because I feel like we get compared to them a lot because they're a non-traditional team who are in the top four right now. And hopefully, for my sake, I would love to see them stick in the top four this season. As much as I am an opposition fan and I want to see West Ham higher than them, as someone who likes non-traditional top teams, please just get in there. But I don't want to sit here and act like this is some like plucky, insane, like, look at them go. It is against the top six. But they've spent crap tons of money like everyone else has. They went and they got one of a great manager who's always been a great manager, despite what people thought about him at Arsenal. I think he's always been a great manager. They went and spent a crap ton of money. It's not science here. It's not difficult to figure out what's happened to how they've got there.
I think the most impressive thing from memory for me is improving the players at Aston Villa. A lot of them look like they're on their way out. Ollie Watkins was on his way out under Steven Gerrard, and now he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League. Douglas Luiz was possibly on his way out, and now he's Aston Villa fending off rumours of 80 million to Arsenal and stuff like that. And he's really improved those players. You had Tielemans at Leicester. I don't want to say looked finished, but he was crap at the end of last season. And when he went to Aston Villa at the start, he looked terrible. But recently, he's been fantastic. Emery's really worked wonders on Tielemans. And there's not every player. I think I've always been a big fan of Konsa, but he's playing adequately at right back. And there's some players that have gone backwards under Emery, one or two. Like I think Matty Cash, for example, isn't as good as he was. In fact, that Konsa's playing ahead of him is not a good thing for Matty Cash. But by and large, he's improved a hell of a lot of the players at that club that were not performing pre-Emery. And I think that's more impressive than anything else. Because Bailey, he had injury riddled, but he was possibly considered a flop prior to Emery arriving, given that he came in to replace Jack Grealish and stuff like that. It hasn't worked. I'm still waiting on Emi Buendia to come back, and I'd imagine Emery will turn him into a success story as well. I think that's the
I think that's fair
thing for me.
I think that's fair, but I would also say that they had Gerrard as their manager. He was woeful.
I know.
He was utterly woeful. It's more like, oh, these players are actually good, as opposed to. I don't disagree with you. I think there is a huge amount of credit to be said about turning players who weren't performing into players that are performing, because it's very easy. It doesn't matter who the manager is. If they're playing badly, it's very easy to just write the player off and then move on with your life. But like, I don't know. It just frustrates me, Gio. It just frustrates me because we're all like, this isn't Leicester. Leicester was a miracle. Leicester was truly incredible. Aston Villa have spent a crap ton of money, got an incredible manager. 2 + 2 = 4. I don't think it necessarily needs to be more complex than that. But it is what it is. I just get frustrated by it. Gio, you'll be live, of course, on the Patreon very soon, doing the player ratings. Yeah, very soon. Okay, right. We need to. Sorry, we're wrapping up. So if you're around, make sure to go check that out. Link in the description below if you want a patron to get involved. Otherwise, like the video, everyone. Subscribe if you're new around here. We appreciate it. We're live at 9 a.m. after every single match day. Even if I do wake up 4 minutes before the show goes live, we do it. We're here. We vibe. But yeah, Gio, appreciate you. Thanks for
enjoyed that.
Speak to you later. Everyone else, enjoy the rest of your day. See you now. Bye.